Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. With us today is Mr. William Chertok, who has been a lifelong member of our community, and in fact the name Chertok has become pretty much of an institution in the city of Coatesville. Mr. Chertok, we're glad to have you with us today as a participant in our Oral History Project.
Pleasure to be with you.
Bill, tell me a little bit about your family business. I know it was started by your grandfather. In what year?
My grandfather founded the business in 1902. And when he and my grandmother migrated to Coatesville from Wilmington, Delaware.
Mm-hmm. Any particular reason that the furniture business was selected?
Originally it wasn't the furniture business, but my grandfather had been an itinerant merchant, and he worked out of a shop in Wilmington that my grandmother looked after while he was on the road, and he found that his covering the Coatesville was very lucrative at the time in 1902. And he felt that it would be a good move for him economically. At that time, they had two children, my father, Samuel, and my Aunt Rose, who were living at that time, and he wanted better opportunities. They wanted better opportunities, and they decided that Coatesville would be a good place for them to settle.
Was that because it had a steel mill here,
yes,
a thriving industry?
Yes, and there was more than one steel mill. There was also, beside Lucan's, there was Worth Steel, and there was Bethlehem Steel, and perhaps even another one that I'm not familiar with at this time. But the steel industry, with the expansion of our country at the time, with many thousands of new immigrants coming into the United States, meant that the steel industry had great demand for expansion of our bridges, municipal services, sewer lines, all the things that are necessary for the expansion of the major municipalities of our country at that time. Now here in Chester County, we're having a new boom on expansion of population.
Of course we are. Of course we are. As a youngster, you spent a lot of time in Westchester, but you did come to Coatesville on a regular basis.
Yes, my father was involved in the business. He had graduated from Coatesville High School in 1915. His name was Samuel Chertok, and he was in the World War I, and when he came back, he worked for the Reading Railroad in their large offices that they had by the Reading tracks near First Avenue and Lincoln Highway here in Coatesville. And in 1922, he went in business in New York with a first cousin. And Mr. Louis Applebaum, who was a prosperous person at that time, loaned my father $5,000 so that he, as his share, to go in the business, which was quite lucrative in New York. And then in 1934, my father came back. My mother was a native of Westchester. She was getting homesick, and she was born and raised in Westchester. And we moved back to Westchester, and my fond experiences were coming over with my father on Saturdays to help in the store as I was growing up, to visit with my grandparents, Meyer and Hattie Chertok, and to do such things as go swimming on Saturday afternoons at the Ash Park pool, play ball at Ash Park, And I had very pleasant memories of coming to visit. And then during World War II in 1943, when commuting was getting difficult, and my father really wanted to come to move back to Coatesville. We did move back, and I went to Scott High and graduated in 1946.
And then from there, you went on to some higher education. And
Yes, I
obtained
was
further
fortunate
degrees.
enough to go to the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School. Graduated in 1950. The following year, I went to the Graduate School of Business at Columbia University, where I got my master's in business, and at Columbia. And then I was offered a job teaching at Drexel University. I taught economics and marketing. And subsequent to that, I also was offered a job working for the Atomic Energy Commission, the Savannah River Project, which was headquartered in Wilmington, Delaware. And I did that, and then I had an obligation for selective service, and I went into the service. Fortunately, I got a direct commission soon after going in, and I was a lieutenant, and I spent training time in the States and then went to Korea during the war. I was there the last 6 months of the war, and then I fortunately there for the armistice and another 6 months.
But beyond that, you found your way back to Coatesville,
Yes,
of course.
I came back, and my parents said, you know, we've been working hard. They wanted to go on a vacation to California to visit my aunt, Elizabeth Ryder. She was living there at the time, and also to do some traveling. And I said, yes, I'll help out that summer. And I didn't get around to going back to applying for teaching positions at the university level, and I've been helping ever since.
Yeah, helping ever since. And I think you've been doing a little more than helping. Tell us what the family business was like at that time when you jumped in to help out that summer.
The business was good. Coatesville was thriving, and there was a great opportunity for me. And the major remodeling had been completed in 1952, and just before I left for overseas. And Lucan's was booming. Lucan's had about 5,000 employees, and we had a great opportunity to expand, which we did over the years.
What was the product line like in the Chertok store at that time?
Actually, the product line was very similar to what it is today. Styles have
Styles, I'm
changed,
sure, have been
but
much different.
Television was expanding. We had a very prosperous television and electronics business. One of the lines that we featured was Magnavox, and Magnavox had excellent console stereos and beautiful cabinets that were very popular at the time. And it was before the age of components. And in addition, we had a large carpet business and furniture.
Bill, I'd like to go back for a minute and revisit the idea of changing styles in the furniture business and appliances. Tell us more about that. I know I've seen some pictures here today of wringer washers. But
Let me backtrack. Let me
please.
just show you a picture. This picture shows my grandfather, Meyer Chertok, and my father, Samuel Chertok, and I would assume that the picture was taken circa 1916, when the business was located in the west end of Coatesville. And if you look at the styles of items, mostly wood furniture and dinette chairs. The inside of the store was dark. It didn't have the lighting that we have in our store today. Chertok's has been located in 4 locations.
I didn't know that.
The first store was at the West End at the corner of Strode Avenue and West Lincoln Highway, where there is now a tavern. And that's in 1902 where the store was first established. It was not a furniture store originally, but it was when my grandfather decided to go from clothing and that type of item to furniture, they moved across the street in a brick building with larger facilities. Then in the early 1920s, they moved to a much larger store in the east end of town in the 300 block of East Lincoln Highway, on the site of what's now the parking lot of the famous restaurant. And they were there until about approximately 1937, when the business moved to 156 East Lincoln Highway, our present location, and then approximately 1940, the property at 200 East Lincoln Highway was acquired, and the walls were broken through to have a much larger store. The total square footage of the store was about 10,000 square feet, and it did not go all the way back to Harmony Street. It wasn't until 1951 that the remodeling took place with an additional 20,000 square feet. So that is the size of the total size is 30,000 square feet. It goes from the Lincoln Highway back to Harmony Street.
So
The other aspect of it, you had mentioned something about washers. Here's a picture of the store as it existed circa 1948. And we had a different logo of our name. We featured ringer washers, and you can see the rounded style of the refrigerators. And then as we expanded, we added new departments, and this was at the opening of a new department which we called Penn Colony House. And at the ribbon cutting was our late mayor, when we did have a mayor in our city. I'm sorry we don't have one now, but hopefully we'll have one day if we arrange to change the charter. Mayor John Titai, I'm in the picture in the center, and the gentleman Al Myron, blessed memory, Joe Filaroma, who was president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, and he unfortunately isn't with us anymore. He died an untimely death. And my father, Sam Chertok, who died in 1984. So that gives you an idea of some of the people involved in the business. And we also have some interesting pictures of other aspects of the business. Here's a picture, Speed Queen Washers, where we did outstanding business with them, and this shows a display of Speed Queen Washers about 30 years ago. Here's another picture that displays in our store. This shows unloading furniture in the rear of our store, a shipment from Rowe Furniture Company of Salem, Virginia. When we remodeled our store finished in 1952, this was a display of furniture that came from Ethan Allen. And that was one of the styles that Ethan Allen had at that time. This shows a picture of a display window, a lighted evening picture, showing the fine mattresses that we've sold. Here's a display of small appliances that were quite popular items over the years. As the stores such as James Way and Kmart came on board, these types of items we found were not as profitable to sell.
Bill, I know when the 50s came along, electronics were the hot ticket at that time, and TVs were coming into vogue. And I know that you carried them in your store. Tell us about how they sold and what do you think was their major appeal?
Originally, they were black and white.
Yes, I know.
And they had round screens, and they're a lot smaller than the average console screen that we have today. In addition, there was not the saturation of television sets per home. Originally, it was a period where most people didn't have television in the beginning. So it took 10 years or more till practically every household had a television set. And now, of course, most homes have 3 or 4 television sets.
I remember as a child, we always had a television set, and I go back to 1950. And the television set that we had was an Emerson. It was a 10-inch screen. And I remember stories of my parents telling me that they had my father's boss come over to watch the Friday night fights because he didn't have a TV, and we did. So it was quite a novelty for us to have that TV.
I remember when I was at graduate school at Columbia, I used to, Tuesday night was the Milton Berle show. And we didn't have TVs in the dorms or the student lounge, but there was a tavern in the neighborhood that had a larger television, not too large, maybe a 20-inch TV. And we used to go to watch the Milton Berle show in 1950.
On Tuesday nights.
Right. Styles have changed a great deal, especially in dinette furniture.
How so?
Well, chrome was very popular in the past, and now it's not as popular. Now we bronze, more of the gold finish, and earth tones and almonds and other. There is still some chrome for accenting purposes.
Seems to me I remember a lot of vinyl textures in furniture back in the 50s. Is that what you recall as well?
Yes, there was a lot of vinyl. It had a disadvantage when it didn't have fabric backing. It used to split and crack very easily. It's interesting that the city of Coatesville hasn't changed a lot as far as the main street is concerned. We still have what was formerly a National Bank of Coatesville building. Right now is City Clock Apartments, where J.J. Newberry had been, is now the Steel City Market. And interestingly, we have a picture showing 2 truckloads of Row furniture that we had arrived in town for us one day about 20 years ago. I was able to provide a picture of the facade of our current business, and this was really established. The facade was developed in 1952. It was completed. You know, we've had a lot of snowstorms in our community, and one of the worst was the blizzard of 1958.
I remember it.
And I remember it because we had 2 infant children at the time. We were living at 1137 Sterling Street, and I was literally snowed in for more than 2 days. And in addition, we didn't have any heat or light for about 36 hours. So it was a very frightening experience. And then, of course, the next big blizzard we remember was a blizzard of '88. So there were 30 years in between we had other serious storms, but I don't think the snow ever piled as high as those 2 blizzards.
Yes. How did those weather conditions affect your business? I know you.
Oh, it's first of all, our employees were unable to get into business.
Yes.
I was unable, and living on close to 11th Avenue, even the walk into business, it took me a day and a half to get downtown. Actually, I've always been able, usually, to get to business during very bad stormy weather, because I have lived in town. I live on 11th Avenue now, and I've lived there since 1962. But our personnel often have difficulty arriving to work and call in and say that they're snowbound. But that's no different than any other business.
I'm sure, though, that even with the blizzards that you've described, even though the blizzard is over and the roads are cleared off, it still must make furniture deliveries a little tough to handle.
It makes deliveries tough, and it makes it tough for customers to come in
I'm sure it
to
does.
shop and get obtain the merchandise that they need.
The Chertok family business has seen a lot of milestones in its, what is it now, 98 years?
Yes. In fact, here's a picture I have showing the celebration of our 62nd year, and the only person who is pictured in this picture who is still with us, is Gloria Pizzarto, who is on the extreme right. She's our office manager now. To her rear is Jim Green, who is alive and well and has been retired from the business for about 10 years.
As I mentioned earlier, the Chertok name and the business has become pretty much of an institution in the Coatesville community, and you've also sponsored a local sports team as well, haven't you?
Yes, we've tried to sponsor various teams. Here's one of them we've sponsored in years gone back.
Do we know what year this is?
Unfortunately, I don't. I would imagine it was about 25 years ago. The coach was Mr. Witmer. We have an interesting brochure, a circular that we came out in tabloid size, celebrating our 78th anniversary, which of course was 20 years ago. My father was managing partner of the business at the time, and I was his assistant, and we had a wonderful staff then, and we still have an excellent staff.
I'm sure you do. The name Sophie Gottlieb comes to mind.
Now, Sophie was born as my aunt, Sophie Chertok Gottlieb. She currently lives in a retirement community, Martin's Run, with my other surviving aunt. Her name is Elizabeth Chertok Ryder, and they live in Martin's Run, a life care community in Delaware County. Aunt Sophie had been very active in our community. I always referred to her and Aunt Elizabeth as Gray Panthers. They really were out to see things done, even though they were in their 70s at the time. Now they're both in their 90s. And Sophie was one of the people in our community that helped form the Coatesville Daycare. And she had graduated from Coatesville High School. She had an interesting career. She went to Westchester Normal School. She taught Modena Elementary School. She decided that she didn't want to stay in education. She went to New York. She was a laboratory technician in New York. And she, when World War II started, she early on volunteered for the Women's Army Corps, the WACs. And she came back from the service, and she soon thereafter married. And unfortunately, her husband, Dave Gottlieb, who was also a veteran of World War II, about 15 years later, he died of a heart problem. So she was on her own for many years, but she was very active in the community. She lived at 15 North 4th Avenue, where her home was open to literally dozens of people who would stop by, and she always had food for them. She entertained a great deal, and she's a marvelous person.
Bill, one more question. What is missing from Coatesville that you wish could come back again?
Well, it would be nice to have the theater in town, but now we do have the beginnings of a new theater, the Coatesville Cultural Society. The building is being built. It would be nice to have the old Sunday meetings that the MCA used to sponsor.
Tell us more about those.
Well, they used to be held on Sunday afternoons, bringing very, very prominent speakers on all types of subjects, political speakers, travel, speakers on their travels, explorers.
This would have been in what time period?
Well, this, I remember as a child, I'm talking about the 1930s, coming to the Sunday meetings and coming back from Westchester to attend them here. They were always very well attended. They depended on a free will offering. J.I. Hoffman was the very famous executive director of the Y, which was located on the site of the Coatesville Towers. And there was an auditorium movie that was operated during the week as a movie, but on Sundays was held open for the Sunday meetings. That took place from the fall through spring, if my memory is correct. Now, other activities that took place in Coatesville were the community concert series, where memberships were sold through the community and through Columbia artists, very famous musical artists performed at the Scott Auditorium.
Can you give us some examples?
The particular names that came, I really forget.
Okay.
But they, at the time, were famous in their own right. Since Coatesville is a smaller community, we did not get a Yehudi Mendelson. Menuhin, pardon me. Menuhin, or Jan Pierce, or people who became, or Nelson Eddy, for instance, and that sort of person. But they did have very talented performers of all types of musical.
And these were well-attended events?
Yes, they were very well attended, but then the attendance diminished, and the community, the people who organized these events, felt that it was not, there weren't enough people who were buying the memberships that provided the funds to pay for the artists to come.
Do you have any thoughts on what might have led to their decrease in popularity?
Well, I imagine one of the reasons was the increase of television. So many people were looking at more television set, programs on television, and as more channels came through and they had opportunity to see music on television, serious music, and I believe that may have been one of the reasons.
Bill, your family has been a very integral part of your business here in Coatesville. Tell us how that has all fit together as a family business.
Well, my wife, Joanne, her first priority was raising our 4 children.
I'm sure.
Their names are Mark and Larry, Susan, and David. When she had the time, and has had the time, she has always come to help pitch in wherever she was needed in the operation of the business, in the sales, office, and in credit matters. Our children are all grown. We have 9 grandchildren now. Our oldest son, Mark, is a chief financial officer of a MS Corporation in New York. Our second son, Larry, he lives in Coatesville, and he is the general partner and managing director of Coatesville, of Chertok's in Coatesville. He has stayed in Coatesville, came into the business soon after graduating from the University of Delaware, and I'm happy that he's taken over the reins from me and pitched in over the past 19 years so that I've had more time to devote to community activities and politics.
Yes, I know you've had quite an active career in the politics here locally.
I'll
in
tell you about
Coatesville.
that in a minute, but I also want to tell you about our other 2 children.
Yes.
Susan, she went to Coatesville High School and then the University of Houston, and she just met her husband there, and a couple years after marriage they decided to move to Israel. They live in Jerusalem, and she's a caterer in Jerusalem, and her husband's an F&M graduate, but they didn't meet until they both were in Houston. And they have 2 children, and we just came back from a 3-week trip in Israel, and they're doing very well. Of course, they're always concerned, and we're always concerned about the peace process and their safety. And our youngest son, David, he and his wife just had their second child, and they live in Tel Aviv, Israel. And he's a lawyer there and doing quite well. And he decided that he wanted to practice law there. He was accepted to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, but decided to go to law school at Tel Aviv University. And he and his wife and 2 children have a very fine living conditions in Tel Aviv. Our family also, I want to tell you about my Aunt Elizabeth
Yes.
Ryder, because she was the other great Panther in the family, and she was instrumental in helping start the Coatesville Food Cupboard here, and she worked for many years with the food cupboard and with the food distributions that took place at the YWCA. And
When does the food cupboard's initiation begin? What year does that date back
I
to?
imagine it was about 20 years ago. And it's been very active ever since. And I know that she was very happy to be able to serve in that capacity. Now, what happened, as far as my political activities are concerned, I always had an interest in politics. And when the late Lou Applebaum, who was an attorney in Coatesville and had been active in the Democratic Party, came to the store one day in about 1962, and he came in to speak to me to ask if I would run for city council or run for mayor at the time. And my father got wind of it and said it's really not a good idea to mix business with politics, and he wasn't very happy about that thought. And so I acceded to my father's wishes, and I did not accept Mr. Applebaum's generous offer. However, I was always interested. In fact, I wrote a paper at Scott High about my day in Congress when I was a high school student. And I was going to ride in my helicopter from Coatesville to Washington and do my congressional business, and then fly back in the evening to be home with my family. Well, that was kind of a dream, and interestingly, I was able, subsequently, in 1954, I had the opportunity to run for the Congress in the Pennsylvania 16th District. Unfortunately, I didn't get elected, but it was a wonderful experience. Back to municipal activities, I was elected to 2 city charter commissions, and the last charter commission recommended in 1979 that we change from a commission form of government to a home rule charter type of government with a city manager and council. We've been operating on that ever since, and it was then that I decided to run for city council. In end of 1979, I was elected, and I was reelected 3 additional times. And in 1993, I promised my wife I wouldn't run for my 4th term. While I was in office, council went through 3 city managers. In the next 4 years, the new city council, which was really micromanaging, which is really not allowed by our charter, they went through 3 city managers in 4 years, and 3 police chiefs, and 1 assistant city manager whom they escorted out of City Hall. And this assistant city manager sued, and rightfully so, was given a settlement of $225,000. And so there was something really wrong with that particular city council, and many people in the community asked me to run again. And from the president of Lukens, Bill Van Sant, and many other people, and I acceded to their wishes, and I was happy to run. And
I hope you got a clearance from Joan.
Joanne gave me the clearance. She wasn't happy, but she gave me clearance. And November of 1997, there were 5 people running for 2 positions at large, and I guess the electorate wanted me back because I came in first. And I was elected president in the beginning, and we brought a new city solicitor in 2 weeks. In 2 months and 5 days, we had a permanent police chief on board, Michael McMahon, and he seems to be doing an excellent job. He's a retired police captain from the city of Philadelphia. And in May, we brought Paul Jansen in as our new city manager, who seems to be doing an excellent job. And I'm sure as a member of the International Council of, International City Managers Association, which has a very important code of ethics that means that when a city manager takes a job, he's not going to skip from the job in 3 months or 6 months, but it's going to stay at least for a period that he or she can accomplish something and will be beneficial to the city and to himself or herself. So we're moving along in our city government now, and we've had very good press, and we're happy. I'm happy to be a part of this fine process.
I'm sure you are. Bill, in the change in the structure of city government from a charter to a commission type situation, did that in any way affect the day-to-day operations of city?
Yes, it did. Actually, it was from the old commission form of government to a manager-council form of government under a home rule charter. And what it did, under the commission form of government, the workers really who worked the various departments didn't know who their real boss was. There was a public works foreman, and then there was a member of the city council who was technically the commissioner for public works. So and then there was a business manager, a business administrator in between. And so the problem was that the worker didn't know whom to take his orders from. The city councilman, the public works foreman or director, or the business administrator. And so each person was working for 3 bosses, and that's not a very good table of organization.
I'm sure it's not.
And by providing a charter that provides for a city manager, and if the person is selected properly, they're professionals. They know how to, that's why they're trained to run municipalities, whether it's a township or a city. And therefore, if they're good, they stay. And the community wants them to stay.
Yes.
And if they're not good, there's provision in their contracts to replace them.
Speaking governmentally and economically, what are your impressions of what lies ahead on the horizon for the city of Coatesville?
Well, Coatesville's been through some tough days.
Yes, it has.
And the city, the expansion that's taken place, and we're not different than even the big city of Philadelphia. Most of the expansion, as far as housing is concerned, and also industrial expansion, has taken place outside the city limits. We have a very good opportunity for people to acquire housing that is fairly priced, and especially new first home buyers want to get a start rather than renting apartments. They have excellent opportunities for housing here in the city of Coatesville.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you again for being a part of our oral history project. It's been a joy talking with you. I know you've certainly opened my eyes to a lot of things that I never would have thought about or ever known. So I thank you again for being with us today.
You're more than welcome. It's a pleasure being with you. If I can be of further help, let me know.
We'll contact you.